Hello and welcome. This is Duel of the Fates, and I am the expert layman, about to analyze the crap out of this. Let me just do my little test on my stream. Make sure I'm coming through. And I am. Awesome. Okay, before I can get into the... I found this when I... I recut the Duel of the Fates lightsaber battle at the end of Phantom Menace to a track from Doom Eternal. No shade on the original music. Amazing. I just wanted to see if I could do something with it, and I really liked it. But as I was editing it, I since, you look at stuff over and over again, I started noticing things, and like I have a strong opinion about it, but for that to make sense, I kind of have to do the other thing, which is, I guess it's my model of the Force, because sometimes in sci-fi, like, the lore doesn't really match up with nature, and you kind of, how things work, and you kind of almost have to make up your own model so that it makes more sense, so that you don't have to, to kind of make up for the poor, science research on the show, or whatever it is. So, first thing about the Force. Oh, I seem to be peeking. You could call this like a fan fiction model of the Force, but it's really not that different, and it doesn't really conflict with anything. It kind of like still works. I did get rid of the metachlorians because that was retarded. There's much smarter way to... Okay, I'm not going to... Stop talking. I did the thing where well, let me just tell you what I'm about to tell you and spend 5 minutes doing it before I even start telling you. So... Uh-oh. I saw the blasphemy in the chat from 2 Tons. I'm assuming that's in reference to the Duel of the Fates original music, and I can't fault you. I will take the guilty plea. But what I wanted to do was... Okay, with the Force. Okay, this is the way I'm looking at it, so it makes sense when I'm watching Star Wars movies. The Force is like a fundamental aspect of the universe. It's everywhere at all times, and, it doesn't experience the passage of time, and if the universe is deterministic, which in this model it is, it doesn't experience time either. So it's almost like a universal constant in the universe, but it's also, the thing's called force part, I'm not getting into that. That just gets too confusing. But we have this idea that the Force is light and dark. Hey, give me crap anytime. From the chat, 2 Tons, what up, Ricky Bobby? Just giving you some crap. You are quite welcome, and there will be many opportunities to come. Yeah, and the Force isn't light or dark. That's what happens when it interacts with conscious beings, dualistic beings like humans, where we are both good and evil, and it's, how the balance works there, and, how much conflict is occurring that makes the difference in the human. Maybe I've been going through the Gulag Archipelago, and I don't think it's Solzhenitsyn. I think he was quoting somebody, but the line between good and evil runs down the middle of every man's heart. And when conscious beings interact with the Force, they cause the light-dark split. It's not part of the Force itself. And the nature aspect of the Force isn't necessarily good, because nature isn't, good or bad. It just is and does what it does. So when they talk about the balance of the Force, this model really addresses, how Anakin could be bringing balance to the Force, and he was, and what it means to, when the Force is with you, because the Force exists before interacting with conscious beings as, just kind of this flat everywhere all at once kind of thing that, is both past, present, future. Because like a deterministic universe is basically a book that's already been written. Now, I think that there's some loopholes and things like that, but essentially, past and future are the same for the Force before it interacts with humans, and that's why what's gained by conscious beings interacting with the Force is seeing a little bit in the future, or actually, basically seeing in the future, seeing in the past, knowing about information that's far away, and actually physically moving things as if you could touch them. Essentially, all the limitations that the Force overcomes are things that would. Oh no, my bit rate's too high. Whatever you 4,500. I'm not doing 4,500. um, I guess what I was working towards is one way of looking at it is whenever a conscious being accesses the Force, they create the polarity, and they may only, or they tip it out of balance in that they are just, if let's say a Jedi is really only pulling from the light side, he increases like the pool in the dark side. So every time, a Force user accesses the Force and only accesses one aspect of the Force, because, their consciousness is either completely dominated by, light or dark. And even these terms are kind of dumb. So this is what explains how if you have like, what was it, like a millennia or something, like a really freaking long time of just the galaxy dominated by Jedi, light Force users, it pushed the Force out of balance, and it created this giant pool of dark energy that could be tapped into by a single Sith or just a couple. And that might be why they have like the rule of two, basically. It's so you don't, even if the current users don't understand this is why, it's so that it's not diluted. You reduce your strength when you have more people on your side overall. And I think that's sort of what happened with, when the Jedi Council like realized that they had a limited ability to use the Force. It's like Palpatine was just cranking up, and it's like he knew. And as messed up as it sounds, when the Force was out of balance to the light side for so long, the Force was actually with Palpatine, because imagine two electrodes, and you are, if you turn up the juice past a certain point, you'll start arcing across. But as you slowly turn it up, at some point, it has to shoot across. You're not going to know when or what shape it'll take or how much it will, discharge, although you might be able to, because it's just trying to balance out an equation, essentially. So when the Force still wants to be the stable, at its more fundamental level, it's stable and uniform, but you call it like the secondary manifestation of the Force that is created by humans consciously accessing it. Lost my train of thought. Rebuild. Damn it. Essentially, and that's why Luke, even though he seemed like a total screw up, was able to get the best of the Emperor. Oh yeah, the arcs. So the Force wants to balance itself, because the second layer of the Force, the conscious Force, has all been pushed to one side, and the conscious Force wants to, be in the middle, because that's what nature does. And it has to do it through okay, maybe I should do the metachlorian replace here now that come back to the other thing, because it would make a lot more sense if you said that, the Force was this fundamental, aspect of the universe, and it's something like a graviton or a force or information carrier in the universe. And biological evolution is really good at just throwing every possible thing beyond what could ever even be conceived against the wall, and anything that just sticks slightly better than anything else will start getting represented in the gene pool. And this could have just been, like an optimization of reflexes or, awareness of your environment. Like, the biology works really slow, so it's probably As soon as you had like minimally conscious beings that could start to access this field of force, there was a genetic advantage, or we call it a selection advantage, to being force sensitive. But I could imagine that this would hit a wall at some point because you get anomalous individuals who were much better at this, and they'd be indistinguishable from someone with supernatural abilities, and that tends to scare people. Also, power has this way of corrupting, so most people who gain an ability over other people will typically, not always of course, but typically start using it to, as an advantage over other people, and that builds resentment. So that could be an explanation of why it just didn't go, far and wide in the population, and it seems to exist in pockets, and some species don't even have it, and others tend to produce more force-sensitive people. It could just be like cultural or, environmental stuff. But that just makes much more sense for how they're accessing the force, and why they would have access to this field that, basically doesn't see a distinction between future and past or near and distant. So the Jedi gets to see a little bit in the future, went up against, another Jedi or something, just to predict what the other person's going to do. And, it's this interesting like chess game where they're playing into the future. But, in a more meditative sense, they can see things further in the future and things that are happening far away, things that happened a long time ago, and, old friends long gone, because the primary, more fundamental force, it's everywhere at all times. And this would also explain why, conscious force users would be able to take physical action that you'd normally have to be close to something for and do it at a distance. And they typically have to use their hands in some way, because I think, the idea of moving something, even though since they're force strong, they can do it at they can ignore the normal distance and actual physical contact requirements. This still makes more sense than metachlorians. Okay. I got most of it. Oh, but the arcing, and force sensitive. And I imagine this evolved just to be like information about the environment at first, but as those genes kept getting selected for, as soon as you had conscious beings walking around, rather than just having it be an information source, some of them were able to actually push back into that environment, and this would be like the telekinesis, or, going into other people's minds. And I believe the primal force, I should just pick a word, the more fundamental force will work through force-sensitive individuals to achieve its balance. And when it picks you, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a good thing. It's just you are the means to, the cosmic balance of the force, the conscious force, I guess you could call it, secondary force. And that gets me to... Oh, that is not the speed I wanted to play that at, or the volume. I just wanted something in the background. And I already, the video did not hit any content ID, so I'm pretty sure it's safe to stream, but I'm sure they will let me know if they're unhappy with me. So this fight, Qui-Gon is with the Force. Obi-Wan, he's still kind of a Padawan. He's not, but the Force has just realized that there is a pattern, like the two electrodes and the electrical bolt that jumps between them. That seems to just like zigzag between points. Right now, Qui-Gon is a point. He is, and that's why he probably comes into conflict with the Jedi Council. And I suppose I should talk about the Jedi Council, the Jedi versus the Sith here. And I kind of hinted at it earlier when I said they were only accessing one side. And they do this, they fear their own inner dark side. They're afraid of the power that it would have. And it's understandable to be afraid of that. But you're not really a complete person until you integrate your, what's the metaphor? Your inner shadow, your inner darkness, your evil half, your dark passenger, the dark malevolent stuff that exists within all of us, but we just like to pretend it's not a thing. But it's there in all of us, and you don't become a more unified being by suppressing it. You integrate it, you own it, you don't fear it. You give it enough voice that it knows it was heard, but then, you don't listen. It's kind of like, almost like in a society where you have like those city council meetings where, the crackpots will come in their best suit and they'll have their stack of papers and they'll talk about how the lizard people are ruining the education system and choose your president is actually an alien. And you see the city council and they're like, okay, and they get their 2 minutes and they say their piece and then they take their papers and they walk out very proudly like, well, I did my part. And you kind of have to do that with like the more retarded parts of yourself sometimes. You're like, okay, I know this is petty and stupid, but have your moment, but we're not doing that. And just integrating the shadow, I think that's what they call it. The Jedi are not interested in this. They suppress their shadow. And this is part of why they need to get them so young, because they just need to inculcate them into this, suppression of like half of their being. And they are the ones who created the huge imbalance in the Force. Now, you could argue that, hey, in the creation of that imbalance, they offered, centuries and centuries of, relative peace, although if it was relative peace, you wouldn't have much to make movies out of. So I don't know if that's a really good argument. And I'm not saying the Sith are right. They are just, the Force so much wants to bring balance back that it will, and there's so much dark Force just floating around in the ether waiting for people to access it, that what's that line from Scarface? It's like, you need somebody to be the bad guy? Okay, I'm the bad guy. That's fine. But I'm going to have some fun along the way. And you could almost say that part of what made Palpatine was so powerful is that he had the discipline. He had the long-term goal stuff, which, Qui-Gon is, the Force is with him. He is ready to do whatever it takes, including die, to bring balance to the Force. Unfortunately, he doesn't know what that actually means, but maybe, he's just devoted, And I have a feeling that he's a person who's also integrated more of his darkness than the typical Jedi, which is probably why he runs into trouble with the Council, because, he isn't, you have a greater moral awareness when you're not suppressing a large part of yourself. So what I think happened was, and here's, I'm getting really fan fiction-y theory here, but when they were sent and Palpatine, just tried to have them killed on that orbital platform and then like taking over the planet and everything, like Palpatine I think he kind of knows that the Force is with him, and he knows that he probably thinks he's doing it, but like through dark incantations, but he's supposed to find the chosen one. And I think he understands what balance to the Force actually means. And when then the Jedi didn't die, and then they went through this other thing, and then when he was sent Darth Maul to kill him the first time and he failed, I think Palpatine realized there's something weird going on here. This deserves greater interest. And I kind of think that he sent Darth Maul, maybe not even understanding why, but he knew that that's the way things had to go. And Darth Maul just thought he was just going to roll these guys, which he totally should have. And one of the cases I'm going to make is that Darth Maul was basically just playing with them. He knew how much stronger he was than them and just wasn't interested in killing them outright at the beginning, which he almost certainly could have done. But because he decided to, I think he just strung them along. He wanted to separate the two of them and then kill the master in front of the apprentice. I think that was his plan the whole time. But when Qui-Gon died, I suppose I can have something on in the background here. That might be distracting. Anyway, so when Qui-Gon, died, the Force lost its conduit for bringing balance to itself. But at that same moment, you have Obi-Wan, who is existing in both empathy, love, pain, loss, anger, probably some murderous intent in there. As strange as it sounds, like he was unified in that moment. He was drawing on what you might say is both the light and the dark side. Because there's this idea that you can only draw on one at a time. And to the credit of the sequels, and it's not easy to find, they seem to start to address this binary view of the Force. And I think, maybe I'll just explain it as I go here. So I think he totally could have just rolled them here right at the beginning. I think the double lightsaber is just actually a gimmick to make it harder on himself, like waiting trading clothes. And this is his fun, because he's been wanting to do it he's been wanting to mess them up for a long time. He's probably been, having dreams about this. And he's going to have some fun with it. And like I said, I think he's just holding back and drawing them in. Because you notice he's retreating, but whenever they get a little bit too much of an advantage, he's like, oh, no, none of that shit. Because in a lot of different games, you can kite mobs for a particular reason, and it feels like he's just kiting them. He's just stringing them along, and he assumes, and then every once in a while, he just proves that he can kick their butts anytime if he wanted to. But maybe there's some arrogance. But I also think Qui-Gon is just he understands that he's doing something important right now, and he doesn't need to understand why it's important. Well, hopefully that half speed Doom music is still pretty awesome. And why did he you see how he stepped up to the edge there? I'm actually going to go back. He's a Jedi. What's that about? He deliberately puts himself in a super weakened position. Now they'd probably say he's just being arrogant, and he is. He could also be just seeing how, if they're holding back, maybe they're holding back like I am, and I think it's at some point he realizes, nope, this is all they got. I do like a lot of the cinematography here and the backgrounds. Yeah, I put in the thing that Sargon is right about the Jedi, and he basically says that they're the Justice Warrior types of the galaxy, and I think that might not be. Maybe that's not exactly what he said, and if he did, I don't think it's quite right, but. They think the way to achieve, good is just by destroying or suppressing evil, and it's the integration path. And I actually do like that one too, because he falls oh, almost burns his chest with his lightsaber. Oh, he's still down, and he's and then as soon as he wants to, he's oh, I'll just get up now. But he did get them separated, which is, you know, the first step, you know, if you're trying to separate two mobs that you're kiting. And it's like, Qui-Gon would have to be wiser. Oh, shoot. Okay, I guess they're more finicky on streams. So, okay then. How does this whole music video go up? Yeah, I got a content ID warning. It's like, I put this whole music video up in 4K, no less. No content ID. I guess it's just, you know, weirder about streams. So I think I will see if this warning dissipates. Okay. Yeah, I think I'll just jump and grab frames here. I think I'll zoom in just a little bit so that maybe it won't. It is weird. But he's got them separated here. And it's no coincidence they went down this hallway of shields. Like, what gets processed inside there that, you know, it needs all these barriers? And I don't know. It looks cool though, and that's enough. I'm okay with that. Yeah. Well, I guess that was I learned something. You know, he's got him separated. He's going to taunt him a little bit. And it's like the kneeling down thing is cool. It's like he knows. He's like kind of resigned to his fate, even if he doesn't exactly know what it is yet. And gets him separated. Can't get through. And I'm going to try to play some of this here just because it's right at this moment, once the door closes, that you see that suddenly Qui-Gon is just outmatched. You can't even keep up with him. He looks very, suddenly very concerned and in a much more meek posture. And it's the showboating like has escalated. And it's like you can see he knows. You know, you can see it in Obi-Wan's face, and you can see it in Qui-Gon's face. Like, what's about to happen? And he's got that. And it's so true right here. It's like he knows. He knows what's a, you know, he knows that he's been played. He knows that, you know, that this guy can kill him anytime he wants and could have at any point. And he's enjoying the fact that Qui-Gon knows this. And now that he knows that he knows that he knows, time to die. And as soon as he turns up the juice, he just completely overwhelms him. And he immediately turns around because he needs to see. He needs to see the pain that Obi-Wan is going through. And here's the moment where I described where like he unified, you know, the light and dark sides of himself. Like all the emotions, positive and negative, it's all just directed. And he's actually going toe to toe with him. You don't see the big advantage. And he's got no reason to hold back anymore. There's no reason to play with him. You just, like, Darth Maul is in like his best form here. You know, it's like you kind of get the sense that he's not holding like anything back anymore, especially after he got his lightsaber cut in half. He's like, okay, playtime's over. You know, this was fun, but time to die. And he does, you know, just overpowers him right there. But that. And first off, right now, Qui-Gon's gone. The Force still wants to balance itself. and Obi-Wan is sort of unified. And oh yeah, Mr. H, the YouTube overlords have spoken. Yeah, they didn't want me. I haven't gotten another warning since I've been spacing it out, so I think I'm okay. The stream still seems to be going. But right now, Obi-Wan is kind of like a unified being in the Force. And Qui-Gon, who was, an agent of the Force, with Force with him, and he did the thing that he needed to do because that was what made Qui-Gon or Obi-Wan enter the state that he was in. And now it's like, has he before or after demonstrated the ability to perceive objects through solid rock? Like just inanimate objects? Oh my god, I got the warning again. Well, there's only one more thing I want to show. And I guess I can skip to it. Maybe I'll just shrink, if I just shrink it down a bunch. There we go. Yeah, I'm still using Media Player Classic. It's still nice for some stuff. When I get to the thing that I wanted to see. Yeah, so he's like not only perceiving things he probably shouldn't be able to perceive, but he's actually using the Force on an object he has no line of sight on. And now he seems to be focusing, and the thing where he makes a certain face and then, like, he looks actually kind of scared there. I don't care. Take my stream down. I need to show this. He makes that face, and then he immediately gets drawn into making that same face. I think he basically paralyzed him. Jumps over, and that would actually make a lot of sense of why freaking Darth Maul just freaking stood there to get, chopped in half. And that's why that's what I think happened with that. Because the Force is also with Anakin. And this will cause them to come together, which will cause him to get trained so that he can be the instrument of the Force balancing, which a little dark, but nature is about balances, and things will swing back and forth in cycles. And I guess it almost just is a tale of, integrating your own shadow. Like, it's okay that, you have dark impulses sometimes. Like, and imagine, morbid things. It's like, you need to be able to do that, because if you can't model that behavior in other people. That's why naive people who want to think everybody's, just nice and you should trust everybody, they're going to have a bad time of it. Oh, from the chat, Mr. H. The original story arc and concept of balancing the Force is something that can only be planned through good writing and storytelling. It's everything the sequels failed to do. Yeah, I'll agree there. I tried to give them some credit, but it's just a product of current Hollywood. It was gonna be bad. Trying to say it's about the nature in which it was bad is why it was bad. No, it was going to be bad because that's just what Hollywood does now. But the fact that it was a particular kind of bad that's particularly annoying to certain people, well, that's just how it happened to play out. It was gonna be bad. But I think that's all I wanted to get through. Unless there were any other questions from the chat, I am going to go ahead and call the stream. I am the expert layman. You all have a great day.